Buddy,
Hello.
you are the faithful few the day after Thanksgiving coming on to study Torah.
It's so
Wow.
good to see you. It's so good to see you. How's Betsy and Aaron and Hannah? How's
Everybody's doing fine. Thank you. Thank
my
you.
family sends their love?
I will. Hold on a sec here.
Hello, Rabbi.
Doing. Hi, everyone.
Hello
Hi,
to you.
Rabbi.
Hi, Rabbi.
Now, if you're brave, I know it's the day after Thanksgiving and you probably feel like 10 pounds heavier, but turn your camera on if you don't mind so I can see you. Because I have a better feeling for how things are going when I can see you. There we go. So nice of you all to be here. I hope everybody had a nice Thanksgiving. As nice as
Too much food.
Well, then that's a nice Thanksgiving.
Are you passing out leftovers now?
What? No, you know what? We were not at our house. We were at our son's girlfriend's mother's house.
Wow.
So
Oh,
we went home with leftovers. Betsy made, let's see, our contribution was Betsy made sweet potatoes with a bourbon glaze, delicious. She made a pumpkin cranberry upside down cake with a caramel sauce, which was just ridiculous.
yeah.
And she made a pecan pie, which was also delicious.
For how many people?
I think there were like about a dozen people, and we had a really nice time. And but we didn't have to, do the dishes or any of that stuff. It was great. Wait, I'll show you guys. Hold on a second.
So much for diets.
Wait, here it is. All right, this is sort of an unsophisticated way to do it, but this is her pumpkin cranberry upside down cake with the caramel sauce.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
I'm telling you, man, this is a heart attack on a platter. I doubled up on the Lipitor.
You do that?
I did.
You do that?
Dana, I don't think she'll give you the recipe. She's like, I'll ask, but I don't know. She guards that one pretty closely. Okay, we should probably get to studying the Torah instead of talking about food, right? So let's.
That's Torah, isn't it?
Yeah. So cameras on for those of you who are willing to be brave and put your cameras on. We don't care if your roots are gray. No difference to me. Great, thank you. It really does help if your camera's on. Okay, so welcome again, everyone. You're the faithful few here with us day after Thanksgiving. Let me just say hello to people I haven't said hi to yet. Carol, Roy, hope you had some fine spirits last night. Phyllis and Warren, welcome. Merle from Arizona, good to see you. Ann, there you are. Doug, good to see you. Let's see, David, looking regal. I like that. You can't help it, I know, it's a burden. Let's see, Barbara's there, Dan and Marty and Karen. Gordon, good to see you too. Risa, where's Stanley? Oh, bless you.
Thank you.
Where's Stanley?
Running errands. He should be home soon.
Running errands. Okay.
Yeah.
That's his middle name. It's like a Native American name, Running Errands.
Yes.
Okay. Stacy, I see you. Ellen, I saw Mark there too. Judy, otherwise known as Granny. Hi, Susan. And let's see. Esterly and Bruce, there you are, Dr. Bruce. Good to see you. Aviva, I can see your picture. Dana, I can see your picture. And Osvaldo, I don't see you, Osvaldo. But anyway, that's everyone. Welcome. All right, let's get rolling. We have this is one of those great soap opera like Torah portions, and so many interesting things to point out and talk about. We're going to look at it today from. It's an overused word, but we're going to look at some of the what I think is a spiritual point in terms of the dreams in this parsha, previous parsha, and the parsha yet to come. We're going to talk about anthropology a little bit, quite a bit actually, and kind of go from there. And objectification versus empathy. So those are the big themes we're going to explore today. Hold on, I want to put this back on gallery so I can see all of you. Okay.
Hello, Rabbi.
All right. Hello, whoever just joined us.
Barbara Kahn is on with you.
Oh, hi, Barbara. Good
Hi
to see
there.
you.
I'm listening to you.
Good. Okay. All right. So here we go. For those of you, and I hope that's everyone who are following along, Vayeshev, okay? Genesis 37:1. Genesis 37:1. You can watch on your phone, or if you actually have the real thing, which I prefer. Genesis 37:1. We start the Joseph story. And it's a famous story, but we're going to break it down. And let's let Marty. Where are you? Where's Marty? There you
I'm still here somewhere.
Okay. All right, Marty, would you please lead us off? Now Jacob was settled. Vayeshev Yaakov.
Let me put my glasses on and get serious.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Now that he heard the things that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob.
No. Slow down. Vayeshev. Okay. Vayeshev, chapter 37.
Oh, 37.
Verse
Goodness
1.
gracious.
Yeah.
That does help.
Yep.
Okay, now Jacob. Now that's a lot better. Okay. Now Jacob was settled in the land where his father had sojourned, the land of Canaan. This then is the line of Jacob. At 17 years of age, Joseph tended the flocks with his brothers as a helper to the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. And Joseph brought bad reports
Hold
of them to his father.
Hold on. Stop right there. So you may remember that I said we're going to talk a little bit about anthropology, or view this from an anthropological standpoint, part of the Parsha from an anthropological standpoint. And we already know from our earlier narratives of families in the book of Genesis that, to put it in anthropological terms, the less DNA shared, the greater the degree of conflict within a family. Right? Let me say that one more time. The less degree of DNA that is shared by the characters, the greater the degree of conflict. And so, right? And the Torah is making the point right away that these are half brothers. Okay? Same father as Joseph and later Benjamin, but different mothers. Okay? And even the other brothers are of two different mothers. So we have a diminished commonality of DNA all over this family, which leads to nothing but trouble in the Torah. Okay? Nothing but trouble. And you know, you can think back to Isaac and Ishmael and go from there. Okay? So that doesn't mean, by the way, if you have identical DNA, there's no conflict, but the degree of conflict, and mostly conflict over property, wealth, it increases based on the decreased commonality of DNA. And this is an anthropological point, not a literary point. Right? This is a fact of tribal culture that's reflected in the reality of the Torah as well, because the Israelites were the Hebrews, the Jews, depending upon what point in history, were not immune from the dynamics of anthropology and tribal culture. And this is going to become important as we go further into the story. Okay, but it's laid right out there. These are half brothers. Okay, now on we go.
All right, and Joseph brought bad reports of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph best of his sons, for he was the child of his old age, and he had made him an ornamental tunic. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of the brothers, they hated him, so they could not speak a friendly word with them.
Okay,
To him.
so we know that he is the son of Rachel, whom is the only one of his wives that Jacob apparently loved. So he's special in that sense. And he is treated as special. Now, and again, another consistent theme is that parental favoritism leads to horrible results also. Jacob,
Tommy's mother said.
right? What?
Tommy's mother said, "Mom always liked you best."
Yeah. Well, Jacob, look at what happened to Jacob and Esau because of parental favoritism, and look what happened to Isaac and Ishmael because of parental favoritism. So we're seeing all these dysfunctional themes being developed within the first 5 or 6 verses, or these themes of dysfunction. I shouldn't say the themes themselves are dysfunctional. The theme of dysfunction, the seeds of dysfunction are clearly sown here in the first few verses. All right. Now let's talk about Joseph and his dreams, and we're going to look at dreams in general. Let's keep going, Marty.
All right. Once Joseph had a dream, which he told to his brothers, and they hated him even more.
Okay, so
He
we
said
know
to them-
that. Wait 1 second. He's 17. Excuse me. He's 17 years old. Sorry. Clearly arrogant and doesn't think before he speaks, right? He tattles on his brothers, and now he has these dreams. And Roy's question, yes, primogenitor, generally. Definitely male. There's a big argument later in the Torah about women inheriting property, but that's only in the case if there are no sons. And yes, primogenitor. And yes, generally based on the DNA issue that we've been talking about. Okay. Now, so Joseph, we know, is 17. He's young. He's favored. He's arrogant. Hey, Scott, welcome to the party. He's arrogant. He doesn't know when to keep his mouth shut. And he tattles on his brothers. And I'm one of 5. That was never appreciated in a family of 5. Okay. Imagine 12, not including girls. And he has this dream, and he doesn't keep the dream to himself either. And let's hear about this dream. Go ahead.
All right. He said to them, "Hear this dream which I have dreamed. There were these binding sheaves in the field, when suddenly my sheaf stood up and remained upright. Then your shields gathered around and bowed low to my sheaf." His brothers answered, "Do you mean to reign over us? Do you mean to rule over us?" And they hated him even more for his talk about his dreams.
Okay. Now, I want to make a couple points about this dream. First of all, you don't have to be Sigmund Freud to interpret this dream as one of dominance. And in addition to that, I just want to make the point now that this is a dream about an earthly endeavor, work in the fields on earth. Okay, and that's going to be important in 1 minute. Let's keep going, Marty.
Okay. He had another dream, and he told it to his brothers, saying, "Look, I have had another dream. This time the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." And when he told it to his father and brothers, his father berated him. "What," he said to him, "is this dream that you have dreamed? Are we to come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow low to you to the ground?" So his brothers were wrought up at him, and his father kept the matter in mind.
Okay, now there's a lot here. I'd like to play my favorite game, What's the Sermon? Because the rabbis make a huge amount out of juxtaposing these dreams, which seem in a sense identical, By the way, you should note that Joseph never interprets these dreams for his brothers or his father. He doesn't say, I'm going to rule over you. They perceive these dreams as that message. It's nothing that he himself says. Would it have been better if he kept his mouth shut? Maybe, but maybe not in the long run for the theme that's being developed. But in any case, compare and contrast these dreams for me, and let's see if there's a sermon in there, because the rabbis make a complete Thanksgiving meal out of this juxtaposition. Compare and contrast. Anybody? Please just raise your hand and let's go at it. Go ahead, David. You unmute first.
Well, in contrast to the earthly first dream, the second dream deals with higher powers, much higher powers, and suggests a kind of, if not God, then celestial designation of the future, as opposed to a simple.
Yes. So, and in a way, obviously the dreams are similar, right?
Yeah.
But if I can use the word domain, is very different. The first one is earthly. The second one is heavenly. Now, what's the sermon? What do you suppose the rabbis make of this? And I'm going to give you a hint. Next week, the Pharaoh has dreams, and the Pharaoh has two dreams. The first is of ears of corn, and the second is of cattle. 7 healthy ears, 7 sick ears, 7 fat cows, 7 gaunt cows. So what I'm asking now is to compare and contrast Joseph's dreams with each other, and both of those dreams with Pharaoh's. And let's see what the message is. David, let's keep going. Go ahead.
Well, it has the logical form of if this, then that. So if one might make a sermon saying that if you work in such a way on earth that you achieve success, which is what the sheaves of wheat do, then you will achieve success in a higher realm as well.
Okay. And what about the Pharaoh?
Well, again, I haven't read that one in a while, so you're jumping ahead. But it seems to me if one starts, one feeds the second, right? In that, tell me the two. What are the two images? One is
two images are of 7 healthy ears of corn and 7 diseased and withering stalks or ears of corn, and the other 7 fat cows and 7 gaunt sickly cows.
Well, if you pursue the analogical similarity, one creates food, the second creates famine, so that when the food goes away, the cows wither and die.
Okay, but what is the domain of both of Pharaoh's dreams?
Earth.
Correct. And what is the and as we've already noted, Joseph's dreams are an ascension, right? From the first to the second is an ascension. Pharaoh's is a descending, right? Fat, healthy to sickly, fat to gaunt, and both earthly in their concerns. Now let's keep moving because we're getting closer. So what kind of a sermon do you suppose the rabbis of 2,000 years ago and 400 years ago, the Hasidim, what do you suppose they make of all of this in terms of Joseph as an exemplar? Where should nobody? Okay, I'm just going to.
May I say something?
Yeah, who's? Yeah, go ahead.
I certainly don't know, but I'm just speculating here. I really believe that God's prominent perspective here was giving these dreams to Joseph, and then Pharaoh having the dreams was to preserve Israel. Now that's the long short of it. I mean, that's that he wanted to bring, Joseph's family into Egypt and preserve the Jewish people.
Okay, stop there. Penina, unmute. Penina, unmute. I need to get a coffee cup that says you're on mute.
Okay, I think what she said is correct. It's kind of like a premonition of what's going to happen. The famine actually brought the family back together again.
Mhm.
They came down to Egypt and that's how they found.
Yes. Okay.
So
There is
the whole thing continued. Yeah.
there is no question about the biblical view of dreams as prophetic. Okay, biblical dream in the understanding of dreams during the time of the Torah was very different than ours. Because we're all so influenced by Freudian psychology, we view dreams as a reflection of our inner lives, of our subconscious life, right?
Mhm.
The ancients saw dreams differently. They saw them as predictors of the future. Okay? So that's sort of an observation, but not necessarily a sermon. Scott, go ahead.
I think it's that. Can you hear me? Am I on mute?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Does this thing
what-
work?
what I think it is I think you have to be progressing from Earth to the other domain, and then if you do not progress from this to that, this will decay.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
In other words, when the Pharaoh stays on the earth, the first is good, it's plenty, and then the second is bad. It is loss. It is a time of famine.
Because he has no connection.
Because he hasn't progressed to the next domain.
Right. He has no connection to God, the heavens, to the greater picture, the cosmos. I'm trying to use whatever language people on this Zoom might be comfortable with. Of course, the rabbis see it as God, right? That Joseph represents in these sermons by the rabbis the Jew as exemplar. He's an exemplar of the Jew. And this is the Jew is always living in two realms at the same time. That the Jew is always on this high wire suspended between this earth and the heavens and God and the spiritual, the physical, the binding of the sheaves, food, farming. But it's only important if it is connected in some way on some spiritual level to if it ascends, if it enables you to ascend in some way. Now, this is very similar to the dream of Jacob's ladder, right? That this ladder, and it says that the angels olim v'yordim bo. Now, most people say that means the angels were going up and down on the ladder, but the Hebrew, and I've said this before, could also mean they were going up and down within him. That he was finally getting this idea of a God that is both immanent and transcendent. So this is one of the ways Jewish theologians think about God, as immanent, here on earth, present, and transcendent. Both. Not one or the other. Both. And the rabbis, in comparing Joseph's dreams, where he goes from the immanent to the transcendent, to Pharaoh's dreams, which are only on a single plane, that's sort of the difference. And I want to give you a beautiful New Agey sounding quote, but it's actually from the Baal Shem Tov. So it's, Middle Ages, late Middle Ages. Where a person's desires are, okay, I love this quote. Where a person's desires are, there he is. And of course, if it were written today, we would say, there she is.
Well, that's beautiful.
Where a person's desires are, there he is. There she is. The Pharaoh's desires are entirely earthly, material, and Joseph's dreams indicate an ascension from that to something else, which is what Scott was really talking about. Now, that's not to say Jews are ascetics. They're not. There's no vowed poverty in Judaism. But there is this challenge to all Jews. There's this challenge to always be ascending in holiness, and for our desires to always be ascending, because whatever we desire, that's where we are. Right?
Oh, that's so beautiful.
It is. Yeah. Penina?
Yes, what you said right now, it's very, very, very true, because we are never separated from the other nations unless it's whatever it is that we do and how we behave ourselves. And there was always, from the beginning, there was always another nation involved, or another person that wasn't Jewish or believed in a higher power involved.
Yep.
And the idea is that was the separation.
Yep.
That we believe in the higher power, in God, and that leads wherever it is that we do.
Yeah, exactly. And so all of this comes from this juxtaposition of the two separate juxtapositions that are related, juxtaposing Joseph's two dreams and juxtaposing those two dreams to the Pharaoh's dreams, right? And this is one that slips by most people, and I find it very powerful. That to sum it up as the Baal Shem Tov did, where a person's desires are, let's change it. Where your desires are, that's where you are. And you can ascend by changing what you desire. I think it's a very, very powerful idea. And like most powerful ideas, it cuts both ways. Right? Okay. All right. Enough about that. Let's move on. Let's go back to, well, I don't know. Let's just keep reading the story. Okay, Marty, go ahead.
All right.
Let's go to verse 12.
Verse 12. One time when his brothers had gone to pasture their father's flock at Shechem, Israel said to Joseph, "Your brothers are pasturing at Shechem. Come, I will send you to them." He answered, "I am ready."
Okay, stop there. The Hebrew is Hineni. Hineni, here I am. Now, two other people respond to God that way. Abraham and Moses, when they're called. Now here, he's not being called by God, but it is a clear indicator. That word, Hineni, is a clear indicator that this is a person, as we say today, on another level. A true servant of God, right? Because that response, that word, Hineni, tells the biblical listener, not necessarily reader, because remember, they didn't have copies running around like we do. This told the biblical listener, oh, this guy's special. This guy is going places. And we've already had that established because remember, the biblical understanding of dreams is that they're prophetic. So we already know this. But here, when you hear this Hineni, it makes the point again. Okay, let's keep rolling.
All right. And he said to him, "Go and see how your brothers are and how the flocks are faring, and bring me back word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron. When he reached Shechem, a man came upon him wandering in the fields. The man asked him, "What are you looking for?" He answered, "I am looking for my brothers. Could you tell me where they are pasturing?" The man said, "They have gone from here, for I hear them say, let us go to Dothan." And Joseph followed his brothers and found them at Dothan.
Keep
They
going.
saw him from afar, and before he came close to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes that dreamer."
Okay, another interesting thing here where the Hebrew is better. I like the Hebrew better. Vayomru ish el echav, and each one said to his brother, Hine Baal hachalomot, master of dreams. But behold, cometh the master of dreams, not the dreamer, the master of dreams. In other words, we know that this is now setting up this idea of the interpreter of dreams, not just the dreamer, but the interpreter of dreams. Again, all of this kind of telling us that Joseph is on a different level. Okay, so let's see what happens.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yeah.
Everyone skipped over Shechem.
Yeah.
Isn't that an important place? And then you've got this man, unknown man, who might be an angel, just like Jacob was struggling with an angel.
Right.
And that's where Dinah went out. That's where Jacob stayed and built an altar. Is there some significance to that?
I don't really know, other than the fact it was home and near home, and later Joseph's bones are returned to Shechem. Shechem is currently an issue, shall we say, because it's an important Jewish city, but it's on the West Bank, much like Hebron. And so it's, this part of Israel from a biblical standpoint is much more important than Tel Aviv, for example.
Yeah.
So it actually has modern importance, because this is where these settlers are, putting everyone in danger. But in terms of this story, I don't really know of anything that would grant it. It is important, but I don't think in the context of this story. I do agree with you that this nondescript man is reminiscent, of angels, of messengers generally. But he doesn't really deliver a message or a prophecy. Doesn't really prophesy anything. So I'm not sure, and neither is the commentary, frankly. So it might be, right? Okay, master of dreams. All right, so they conspired to kill their brother, but remember, he's their half brother. All right, very important. Go ahead.
All right. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of our pits. We can say, a savage beast devoured him. We shall see what comes of his dreams. But when Reuben heard it, he tried to save him from them.
Now, Jimmy, let me just point out before we keep reading, you have two stories woven together here. In one, Reuben tries to save him, and in the other, Judah tries to save him. So there were very likely two different versions of this story woven together into one. Okay? And you'll also see he's sold to the Ishmaelites in one and the Midianites in another, and they do become synonymous, but we probably have two different stories woven together into one here by a very gifted editor. Okay, so Reuben hears it and he tries to save him, and he says, Marty?
All right. He says, let us not take his life. And Reuben went on, shed no blood, cast him into the pit out of the wilderness, but do not touch him yourselves, intending to save him from them and restore him to his father. When Joseph came up to his brothers, they stripped Joseph his tunic, the ornamental tunic that he was wearing, and took him and cast him into the pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it.
Okay, let's stop there. And I want to talk a little bit. Hi, Lori, welcome. I want to talk a little bit about this stripping of the coat. Okay, and just remember this. They strip him of the coat and then they throw him in the pit. Does that, is there a sermon in that? Let me put it that way.
May I, Rabbi?
Yeah, sure.
I think total jealousy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they were absolutely jealous of him. There's no question about it.
The coat.
But why strip him of his tunic? Why strip him bare?
To remove they were angry when the coat was given to him in the first place, and they wanted to remove it because that's one of the reasons right there.
Well,
They shame him.
To remove the visibility of his success.
You're getting, I think, look, there's no right or wrong answer here.
So,
Jealousy is the simple answer. It could be absolutely correct. But what do you suppose, even as half brothers, is required to throw your half brother in a pit with no water and then eat a sandwich, by the way. That's what's next. They sit down and have a bite to eat.
Oh my God.
What is required to treat another human being that way? What must one first do? Scott and then David.
It is a well, I don't know the answer to your last question, but your original question. It's a signifier of his specialness, of his preeminence to them, that is intolerable to them.
Right? Good, very good. David?
You have to take away his identity.
Bingo. That too. Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Right? They have to be able to objectify him. In order to eliminate empathy, they have to objectify him. They have to remove anything about him that made him him, that made him Joseph, that made him unique. And think about this. Isn't this always the case? Why are prisoners given uniforms? Why were Jews given numbers? Stripped, shaved heads, uniforms, numbers. Why are soldiers in uniform like that, right? There is this necessary dehumanization that has to take place in order for not just murder, but evil. Many of you have read or know about Martin Buber's book, I and Thou. So I'm going to just give you a shorter than thumbnail sketch of I and Thou, okay? Yes, this is, Doug, you're right. Exactly. This is what I was talking about when you were arrested by the Nazis and sent to the camps. Your head was shaved. Everything about your personal effects, everything about your uniqueness as an individual, your name was taken away and you were given a number. Everyone's heads were shaved, so everybody looked the same. It was a process, and only after that process could empathy be eliminated and mass murder take place, right? And I don't want to overstate this business about stripping him of the coat, but I think that Scott and David are right, that this is part of the dehumanizing process, the objectification. So back to Martin Buber. So Martin Buber's view was that essentially there are two kinds of relationships between human beings: I-it relationships and I-thou relationships. I-it relationships were relationships that are transactional. I thought about this. This is because I'm a rabbi and I'm weird. I actually thought about this. I thought about this yesterday when Betsy sent me back to Whole Foods to get 3 more pounds of sweet potatoes. I'm standing in line waiting to check out, and I'm thinking about the people, the checkout people, and how they are, in a sense, because there's an automatic checkout thing where you can scan the code and check out yourself. But if you have like potatoes or whatever, it's a bigger hassle. You got to know the number and the this and that. So I went to the regular line. And it occurred to me that these people are just extensions of that machine that scans a code. My relationship with them is transactional. They're an it.
Uh-huh.
Now, I try to be a nice person. Hi, how are you? How's your day? Do I really care? No. Do they care? No. How are you doing today, sir? Fine. How are you? Great. Yeah. None of us care. So it's an I-it relationship. It's transactional. An I-thou relationship is a relationship where you are truly recognizing the humanity in each other.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
Right? It's I and thou. And
I think of Walt Whitman in that.
yes, right. And the first, for Buber, is the explanation for evil. Evil grows where objectification and dehumanization are present, right? And
That's true.
and yes, and now here's really the tricky thing about the I-thou relationship, according to Buber, is the moment you realize you're having an I-thou relationship, it's over. The moment you say, oh, well, I'm really relating to this person, I love this person, they love me. The minute you start getting into your head about it, you've killed it. It's over. Like, I think it was Wordsworth said about literary critics, they murder to dissect. In order to dissect something, you've killed it. You have to kill it. So when you start dissecting the interaction, it's over. But you get the idea of what it is. Now, to go even further, Buber essentially says that when you're having an I-thou relationship with another human being or animal or nature, it is simultaneously an I-thou relationship with God.
Yes.
Okay, so all of this, I mean, maybe I'm making too much of this coat business, but maybe not. That we can only really do evil when we dehumanize. I'll tell you just one more story quickly, and then we'll move on. Nobody's working today anyway, so we can go over. It doesn't matter. Right. I have a weird fascination with prisons and prison life, and I think because it's my greatest fear. But I read prison novels, I see prison movies, I watch prison TV shows. I've always since high school been obsessed with it. And one day I was sharing this obsession with a young couple that I was preparing to officiate at their wedding, and they were both prison psychologists. And I shared this with them, and they said, well, do you want to come for the day? You want to come to work with us? So I jumped on that. And they worked at the state prison in Chino. So I went, and I was just amazed by the complete lack of empathy that existed in every prisoner that I interviewed. The cover story was that I was a journalist writing an article about the prison system. And I was, just interviewing people, one, relatively young kid, probably in his early 20s, who had raped an 80-year-old woman, a guy who was up for parole, who had raped a 10-year-old and said he was remorseful, but when he was asked by the parole board if he could remember what his victim's name was, he didn't know. So I just was seeing this depravity, and then I said, the psychologist, the woman, said to me, I said, these people have no soul. And she said, well, they probably did, but it was gone by the time they were 5. However, she said, if you insult one of their mothers, they'll kill you. They would never rape their mother. They could not objectify their mother, but they could objectify others, and therefore could never do violence to one and could easily do violence to the other. It was an incredible moment, that I realized that how dangerous dehumanization and objectification are, and that Buber, I think, was right. It is the root of evil. It is the root of evil, because if you have empathy, it prevents it. True empathy, not fake empathy. Anyway, that's a very extreme example. Dan, go ahead.
I think that the question should be, what is it that leads to the dehumanization, which then leads to trying to crush the other person?
Right.
And I think that you might say that the precursor is kind of the anger and resentment that we see in the story here, which is the precursor to the dehumanization.
Yes. Yes. the parental favoritism, which in a way dehumanized the other boys, all of it. Yes. I guess Aretha Franklin was right. It all comes down to RESPEC,
Steve T.
right? The Torah all comes back to Aretha. All right, I want to move on now. Okay. Let's move on. Okay. Now we get to this crazy story about Tamar.
Call from 312-645-46.
Oh, let's mute, okay? Who's ever not muted, so that we don't hear your incoming calls. Thank you. Okay.
645-4654.
Yeah. Steve, don't hurry so fast. It's so interesting what you're doing.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. I've got all day, except I have to prepare. I have to prepare for the service tonight. So other than
We're not
that,
watching the clock. We just love being.
and I promise to walk the dog too. No. Okay. Actually, I didn't promise to. I got you are walking the dog, right? So
I think all rabbis are running errands today.
okay. All right. Now let's get into this Tamar story about Tamar. Stuck in the middle of the Joseph narrative, just like plop down in the middle of this thing, is the story of Judah and Tamar. And it's complex. I don't want to spend too much time on it, except to use it as another example of kind of the anthropology of the Torah. The anthropological perspectives being worked out in the book of Genesis. So we already talked about this dynamic, tribal dynamic that anthropologists have identified, which is the higher the degree of DNA, the greater the cooperation and the less dysfunction.
Oh.
And the opposite is also true. Here, what we're seeing is an exploration from an anthropological standpoint.
You're breaking up.
Okay, here what we're seeing is an exploration.
You're freezing.
Is that better? I'm freezing. I am from Minnesota. Let's see. How is it now? Is it better?
You haven't frozen.
Keep speaking.
You
Oh,
haven't-
no. Right now you're frozen.
No.
No,
Oh, it's you, Karen.
Carol's frozen.
It's you. Okay. Now
You're frozen.
I have no. I think it's your issue, Karen, not on your side. I have a great joke about that. Can I tell you a great joke about that?
Please.
Okay, and then we'll get to Tamar. So this guy's having his annual physical with his doctor, and doctor says, "How things going?" "Great." He says, "Everything good at home?" "Yeah, but I think my wife has a really serious hearing loss issue." And he says, "Well, I'll give you a simple test you can do when you go home, and you can try the test and let me know how it goes, and we can diagnose the severity of the problem." He said, "Here's what I want you to do when you get home. I want you to stand 30 feet away from her. When her back is turned to you, maybe she's in the kitchen over the sink or something, and just ask her what's for dinner. So, and then if she doesn't answer, go like 15 feet behind her and ask her what's for dinner. And if she still doesn't answer, get right behind her and just really shout, what's for dinner? And let's see at which point she responds." So, okay, goes home, 30 feet behind her. He says, "Honey, what's for dinner?" No answer. Moves 15 feet behind her. "Honey, what's for dinner?"
I made a reservation.
No answer. No answer. Gets right behind her and shouts, "Honey, what's for dinner?" She turns around. She says, "I told you 3 fucking times already, chicken."
I love it.
So we always think it's the other person who has the problem. So think of that joke, right?
That's
So
so good.
Karen, it was your Wi-Fi, not mine.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Okay, back to business. Now, from an anthropological standpoint, what is going on in this story of Tamar, who marries one of Judah's 3 children, and he dies. She's childless. She marries the second brother as is required by Jewish law. He wants nothing to do with having children with her, and so he undergoes some trickery to prevent any possibility of her becoming pregnant by him. And then she's promised the third child by Judah, the third son. He never delivers on the promise. Then Judah's out on a business trip, and Tamar sees him coming. So she wraps herself and pretends to be a prostitute. He has sex with her. Remember, this is her father-in-law. He has sex with her, thinking she's a prostitute. He says, she says, what are you going to pay me? He says, I'm going to pay you with a lamb. And she says, well, how will I know you're going to give it to me? She says, give me, now listen, give me your cloak, your robe.
Oh, there's the robe.
And your seal and your staff. And when I get the lamb, I'll give him back to you. Fine. They do the deal.
Oh, wow.
Okay. But he never really delivers. And then he's ready to give her what he owes her. And he says, he goes back to the town and says, where's the prostitute? They said, there's no prostitute here. There never was. And to make a long story short, she becomes pregnant. And he, becomes incensed because he heard that she was acting like a prostitute. And then she says, it's true, I was. And these belong to the guy I was acting like a prostitute with. And it was his robe and his staff and his seal.
Oh.
And he says, you're right. It was me. And he, first of all, it's a very good biblical example of owning up to what you've done. But also, it's an exploration now you start to see of who is it okay to marry? Who is it okay to marry the second or third time if there are no children? Can you marry brothers? Can you marry a father-in-law or have sex with a father-in-law? Can you marry a sibling? Can you marry a first cousin? Because there are three strategies. This is all like Anthropology 101. There are three strategies that tribes use to survive and prosper. The first one is one that I would call more is better. The more children, the more stuff, the more wives, more is better. So polygamy is a positive thing in this case. But this is sort of the Torah also working out, well, is it really better? Because look what happens when you have all these wives and all these half-siblings. Is it really better for the family? Or do you end up with nothing but misery and dysfunction, which is not really good for the survival and the prosperity of a family? Okay? And then you have a second, which is a variation of the first, which is what I would call, let's stick together. Let's keep the money and the wealth in the family. Let's stick together. That's why you marry a deceased husband's brother if you don't have any children. Let's keep it, in the family, which allows, technically not incest, but which allows intra-marriage within reason. Because let's keep in mind that if full siblings married and had children, I mean, it would have become obvious pretty quickly that wasn't good for human development, right?
Right.
So this is kind of the working out of how close is too close and how close is just close enough to keep it in the family, to keep the wealth in the family, to keep the power in the family. So it's somewhere between more is better and monogamy and inter rather than intra marriage. There's that middle ground. And this is a story, I think, about the exploration of that middle ground. And then in a minute, we're going to get to Joseph, who is an example of a third way, which ends up becoming predominant in Western civilization. And I'll just tell you what it is right now. It's reconciliation and monogamy.
I love monogamy.
Reconciliation and monogamy. Joseph
Yeah,
has
monogamy.
Joseph has one wife, Osnat. That's it. And he has Ephraim and Manasseh with her, and they are the first generation in the Torah to be functional.
I love it.
Right? And so I really believe that this is the Jewish version of how we worked out what ultimately was best for the tribe and our civilization.
Do you think we're diluting our tribe now by this intermarriage?
Well, I'm speaking pure in terms of pure biology now. I'm not talking about religious intermarriage, because practically none of these women were Jewish. It didn't matter because it was all patrilineal descent.
Right.
Right. And so frankly, the diversity is probably good for the gene pool. Maybe we'll have fewer Jews with irritable bowel diseases. And I'm serious, but let me just be clear. This is pure biology. This has nothing to do with what today we consider to be faith and religion. This is about material prosperity and trust. Who can you trust? And so ultimately, Joseph becomes the example of monogamy and of reconciliation, because he could sever his brothers' heads from their shoulders, but he doesn't. He makes peace, and this is a different way. He creates, let me put it this way, he's kind of a social genius. Joseph is a social genius, and he creates solidarity with intellect and words. And even in Egypt, where lineage is not as important as talent. And so Joseph is this very interesting, yes, flawed in the beginning perhaps, but this very, I think, interesting and holistic model of what is ultimately best for civilization, which is reconciliation, monogamy, so you don't have this sibling rivalry, and you don't have this DNA issue, this inverse ratio of morality and DNA. And that's what I think from an anthropological standpoint is what's going on here. And by the way, when it comes to Thanksgiving, I can't think of a better model, because who doesn't dread Thanksgiving when, the second mother's son from the first marriage is going to be there, and the this and the that. And, we all have this in our families, and it's not easy.
I don't dread it.
Well,
I'm blessed that way.
I'm sorry, Carol, go ahead.
I don't consider it a nemesis. Each family is unique, and modern families are different than ancient families. I was fortunate that my divorced father and my divorced stepmother fell in love, but we did not get raised together. I didn't have step siblings when I was 6. I had them when I was 16.
Yeah.
So
Big
those formative years,
big difference.
we weren't vying for mommy and daddy's attention and all the things that we needed to nourish us.
Right.
And we were lucky. We like each other. We like each other, and we love each other.
I have seen good examples of it, but it generally is a more difficult situation to manage than not. And I'm really just trying to make the point that I think that part of the arc of the narrative of Genesis is the working out of how really best to survive and proceed. prosper as a tribe and as a people. And so you have Joseph as a model of two things we've talked about today. He's able to live in a spiritual world with a God that is immanent and transcendent, that he ascends in his desires and his dreams from the material to the spiritual, and he believes in reconciliation and monogamy. Now, it's quite possible that the monogamy that there is a different version of monogamy, which is practiced by the great apes, by the way, which is called serial monogamy, where, like, for example, the silverback gorillas are monogamous. The males are monogamous until the children are on their feet and able to start their own families. And then he becomes monogamous with another female. So he's a serial monogamous, which is what's best for survival in that case. So anyway, Susan, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question. I totally agree with you with Joseph. I think he's
Good. Let's stop there.
No, this is not an agreement.
Go ahead.
You.
Yeah.
I think he's terrific and the most blessed. And the question is the Jewish Judaism, the Jewish practice. We always have the other three that are deeply flawed. Maybe not Isaac. And
Yes.
Joseph is like terrific. So why don't we include Joseph? Is that because he married out of the faith, or what?
Well, first of all, it's possible that Osnat converted. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
And they all married out of the faith with one or two of their wives, right?
Right.
Including Moses. So I don't think that's it at all. I think that the Abraham Isaac, again, this is sort of a literary and anthropological and political point. I think that those narratives were woven together and given prominence in order to unify a disparate group of human beings, a disparate group of people who later political leadership wanted to unify into a single nation or kingdom, the North and the South, right? I mean, that's, and the way that was done was by combining their narratives and saying, we all share these narratives. Abraham is the father of all the Jews, which of course is historically not true. But the narrative was created to unify the people. Now, why did it stop and not include Joseph?
Right.
You know, I don't really have a good answer for you. I don't really know. Stanley, do you have an opinion about that?
I do.
Why not Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef? Like,
Right.
First of all, I wasn't there. I wasn't.
But what do you think?
I think that the Abraham, Isaac, Jacob story is a unified story.
Right.
Everything else is ancillary. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, Leah, that's a cluster. And you can always say, why don't we add more to the cluster? Yeah, but that wasn't the literary cluster. That wasn't the structure of the narrative itself. That may sound like a weak excuse from our perspective. Yesterday, I proposed on one of my Facebook postings that we should make light one candle part of our liturgy. I'm going to rewrite all of Jewish liturgy because the statement, don't let the light go out, is as important as justice, justice shalt thou pursue.
Yeah.
Going back,
it is possible. You know, it's funny because the classic sermon is a 3-part sermon. And I once asked my professor of homiletics, why is the classic sermon 3 parts? And you know what his answer was? 2 isn't enough and 4 is too many. And maybe there's something to what Stanley's saying is it's sort of a rhetorical device, that 3 is just the sort of kind of baked into us the way the number 10 is kind of baked into us. Why aren't there 12 commandments? Why aren't there 7? Why are there 10? You know? So Who knows?
Into it. 4 is baked into us too.
4 is also 4, 40,
and
and
the
40.
kids
Yes.
do 3.
Yes.
So
So maybe,
I think he's so great, and the others are not as great.
by the way, most jokes have 3 parts.
Yeah.
The joke I told you had 3 parts. The doctor, the guy, the wife. And he approached her 3 times. So it may in fact be more a literary device than anything else. Penina.
No, I'm 1 minute. Oh,
Yes, Roy, you're right. Go ahead, Penina. You're muted now. You muted yourself. Unmute. Penina.
And while you're thinking,
There you go. You got
okay
it.
now?
Yes.
Okay, I don't think that the thing was over there and the problem was solved. There are cultures today that they still marry more than one wife.
Yes, there are.
And I don't know if it's always a matter of gaining more territory or gaining more material things. I think it's just a matter of allowing it to happen. And also with the Jewish nation, with the Jewish faith, they didn't stop it. And it continued all the way till Rabbi Gershon ben Yehuda, who came out with a letter, when was it, in the 14th century?
Yes.
That allowed people to marry only one wife?
Joseph.
The Jewish religion. And when the Yemenite Jews never got the letter, and they continued, and by the time they came to Israel in, when was it, 56, 57?
Joseph is
more than one wife.
Yes.
And the wife didn't want to leave. They cried, and they had to leave and stay with the husbands and wait till the next generation to actually enforce the law of one wife in Israel.
So you're correct. There are
sometimes of what a man.
Joseph is an early example of where the culture eventually got to, right? And it's really not as late as the 14th century. It was practiced but shut down. But if you go to Ketubot, I mean, come on. That's what a get was you had to divorce someone before you married another person.
Right.
So it's about 1,000 years after the Joseph story, it becomes really normative. Although you're correct, there are exceptions. And Joseph is, as we already know, he's also an example of something that doesn't come till later, which is the court Jew. Yeah. He is the second most powerful person in Egypt. Right? And that doesn't happen till later, but he is an archetype. He's a very interesting precursor to where Judaism eventually evolves. And that's what I find so fascinating about him. And I think Susan is right. He gets a bad rap because he was arrogant. He was a dandy. He actually matures. Now, I'm just going to make one more point. We didn't get to everything I wanted to talk about today, but in prison, when Joseph is presented with dreams by these 2 prisoners, what does he say? He says, well, God can interpret these dreams, not I.
Right.
God can interpret these dreams. And so he matures spiritually. He does ascend from the pit to Egyptian culture, from prison to the Pharaoh's court. And the other thing I would say is, on this objectification point, if you read ahead, when he becomes a servant to Potiphar, and Potiphar's wife she harasses him. It's definitely sexual harassment. Sleep with me, sleep with me, sleep with me. And he refuses and refuses and refuses. And finally, she gets sort of so angry with him that she pulls off his robe and then screams that he was trying to rape her. And here's the proof, the robe. For the 3rd time now, we have, and she says to her husband, your slave, that slave you brought here. How does she move him from honored, respected servant in charge of the entire household to slave, takes off the coat. There it is again.
She demotes him.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there was
Yes.
a term you used, psalmoletics. I'm imagining it has to do with sermonizing, but you were studying, is it psalm? I don't know.
No, it's called homiletics. H-O-M-E, like a homily.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. I was an adjunct professor of homiletics for 13 years, and that's about the best thing I can say about it. It sounds fancy. It sounds really fancy, but it's not so fancy. So let me sort of conclude with.
Well, wait a second. Can I at least point out that you were a damn good professor of homiletics? That's it.
And we're trying to get him to do it again.
Hey, they asked me back, and then they called and said, "Sorry, we already hired someone, and we didn't know." So,
That's this year.
yeah, the right hand doesn't know what
Next
the
year
left
in
hand's
Jerusalem.
doing. That's
They
all
don't
right.
know what they're missing.
I was always in it for the money because, man, they pay big. Big money, big money. Okay, let me end with this theme that of Thanksgiving and family. Joseph is an extraordinary example, as I said, of reconciliation. It's hard to imagine being more mistreated by family than he was mistreated by family. And he chooses to rise above it and present us with a model of reconciliation rather than competition, reconciliation rather than revenge, reconciliation rather than dysfunction, as the way to move forward as a family and as a people. And it's not the easiest. It's not the easy way, but it's, if I may be so bold, the godly way. And so I offer that to all of us as we enter into the holidays with family, however, and in all the many ways we define family. So we all, we want to be immanent and transcendent as the holidays present themselves to us. That's my hope for all of us. I hope everybody had a beautiful Thanksgiving. I am so grateful for all of you. And I don't know when I'm teaching again, but probably in a few weeks. And I hope I'll see you again. And I hope you'll watch services tonight. Tonight, I think I'm going to do a whole thing on the Jewish view of gratitude and Thanksgiving and not talk about the Parsha so much, if at all. So that's tune back in tonight.
Rabbi.
Tune back in tonight at 6:30. And
Do you have to go?
Well,
Shabbat Shalom.